He heard his door open softly, then close. He knew at once that it was his battle instructions. He opened his eyes, expecting to find the darkness of early morning before 0600. Instead, the lights were on. He was naked, and when he moved, the bed was soaking wet. His eyes were puffy and painful from crying. He looked at the clock on his desk. 18:20, it said. It's the same day. I already had a battle today. I had 2 battles today. The bastards know what I've been through, and they're doing this to me. William B., Griffin Army, Talomomo, Tiger Army, 1900. He sat on the edge of the bed, the note trembling in his hand. I can't do this, he said silently, and then not silently. I can't do this. He got up, bleary, and looked for his flash suit. Then he remembered he had put it in the cleaner while he showered. It was still there. Holding the paper, he walked out of his room. Dinner was nearly over, and there were a few people in the corridor, but no one spoke to him, just watched him. Perhaps in awe of what had happened at noon in the bathroom, perhaps some of the forbidding, terrible look on his face. Most of his boys were in the barracks. Ho, Ender, there going to be a practice tonight? Ender handed the paper to Hot Soup. Those sons of bitches, he said. 2 at once? 2 armies, shouted Crazy Tom. They'll just trip over each other, said Bean. I've got to clean up, said Ender. Get them ready. Get everybody together. I'll meet you there at the gate. He walked out of the barracks. A tumult of conversation rose behind them. He heard Crazy Tom scream, 2 far-eaten armies! We'll whip their butts! The bathroom was empty, all cleaned up. None of the blood that poured from Bonso's nose into the shower water. All gone. Nothing bad ever happened here. Ender stepped under the water and rinsed himself, took the sweat of combat and let it run down the drain. All gone, except they recycled it and will be drinking Bonso's blood water in the morning. All the life gone out of it, but his blood just the same, his blood and my sweat, washing down in their stupidity and cruelty or whatever it was that made them let it happen. He dressed himself, dressed in his flash suit, walked to the battle room. His army was waiting in the corridor, the door still not opened. They watched him in silence as he walked to the front to stand by the blank gray force field. Of course, they all knew about this fight in the bathroom today. That and their own weariness from the battle that morning kept them quiet, while the knowledge that they would be facing 2 armies filled them with dread. Everything they can do to beat me, thought Ender. Everything they can think of. Change all the rules, they don't care, just so they beat me. Well, I'm sick of the game. No game is worth Bonso's blood, pinking the water on the bathroom floor. Ice me, send me home. I don't want to play anymore. The door disappeared. Only 3 meters out there were 4 stars together, completely blocking the view from the door. 2 armies weren't enough. They had to make Ender deploy his forces blind. Bean, said Ender, take your boys and tell them what's on the other side of this star. Bean pulled the coil of twine from his waist, tied one end around him, handed the other end to a boy in his squad, and stepped gently through the door. His squad quickly followed. They had practiced this several times, and it took only a moment before they were braced on the star, holding the end of the twine. Bean pushed off at great speed, in a line almost parallel to the door. When he reached the corner of the room, he pushed off again and rocketed straight out toward the enemy. The spots of light on the wall showed that the enemy was shooting at him. As the rope was stopped by each edge of the star in turn, his arc became tighter, his direction changed, and he became an impossible target to hit. His squad caught him neatly as he came around the star from the other side. He moved all his arms and legs so those waiting inside the door would know that the enemy hadn't flashed him anywhere. Ender dropped through the gate. It's really dim, said Bean, but light enough you can't follow people easily by the lights on their suits. Worst possible for seeing. It's all open space from this star to the enemy side of the room. They've got 8 stars, making a square around their door. I didn't see anybody except the ones peeking around the boxes. They're just sitting there waiting for us. As if to corroborate Bean's statement, the enemy began to call out to them. Hey, we be hungry. Come and eat us. Your ass is dragon. Your ass is dragon. Ender's mind felt dead. This was stupid. He didn't have a chance. Outnumbered 2-1 and forced to attack a protected enemy. In a real war, any commander with brains at all would retreat and save his army. What the hell, said Bean. It's only a game. It stopped being a game when they threw away the rules. So you throw them away too. Ender grinned. Okay, why not? Let's see how they react to a formation. Bean was appalled. A formation? We've never done a formation in the whole time we've been an army. We've still got a month to go before our training period is normally supposed to end. About time we started doing formations. Always have to know formations. He formed an A with his fingers, showed it to the blank door, and beckoned. A tune quickly emerged, and Ender began arranging them behind the star. 3 meters wasn't enough room to work in. The boys were frightened and confused, and it took nearly 5 minutes just to get them to understand what they were doing. Tiger and Griffin soldiers were reduced to chanting catcalls, while their commanders argued about whether to try to use their overwhelming force to attack Dragon Army while they were still behind the star. Momo was all for attacking. "We outnumber him 2-1, while B said, "Sit tight and we can't lose. Move out and he can figure out a way to beat us." So they sat tight until finally in the dusky light they saw a large mass slip out from behind Ender's star. It held its shape, even when it abruptly stopped moving sideways and launched itself toward the dead center of the 8 stars where 82 soldiers waited. "Dooby-doo," said a Griffin. "They're doing a formation." "They must have been putting that together for all 5 minutes," said Momo. "If we'd attacked while they were doing it, we could have destroyed them." "Eat it, Momo," whispered B. "You saw what way that little kid flew. He went all the way around the star and back behind without ever touching a wall. Maybe they've all got hooks. Did you think of that? They've got something new there." The formation was a strange one. A square formation of a tightly packed bodies in front, making a wall. Behind it, a cylinder, 6 boys in a circumference and 2 boys deep, their limbs outstretched and frozen, so they couldn't possibly be holding on to each other. Yet they held together as tightly as if they had been tied, which, in fact, they were. From inside the formation, Dragon Army was firing with deadly accuracy, forcing Griffins and Tigers to stay tightly packed behind their stars. "The back of that sucker is open," said B. "As soon as they get between the stars, we can get around behind." "Don't talk about it, do it," said Momo. Then he took his own advice and ordered his boys to launch against the wall and rebound out behind the dragon formation. In the chaos of their takeoff, while Griffin Army held tight to their stars, the dragon formation abruptly changed. Both the cylinder and the front wall split in 2 as boys inside it pushed off, almost at once. The formations also reversed direction, heading back toward the Dragon Gate. Most of the Griffins fired at the formations and the boys moving backward with them, and the Tigers took the survivors of Dragon Army from behind. But there was something wrong. William B. thought for a moment and realized what it was. Those formations couldn't have reversed direction in mid-flight unless someone pushed off in the opposite direction, and if they took off with enough force to make that 20-man formation move backward, they must be going fast. There they were, 6 small dragon soldiers down near William B.'s own door. From the number of lights showing on their flash suits, B could see that 3 of them were disabled and 2 of them damaged. Only 1 was whole. Nothing to be frightened of. B casually aimed at them, pressed the button, and nothing happened. The lights went on. The game was over. Even though he was looking right at them, it took B a moment to realize what had just happened. 4 of the dragon soldiers had their helmets pressed on the corners of the door, and 1 of them had just passed through. They had just carried out the victory ritual. They were getting destroyed. They had hardly inflicted any casualties, and they had the gall to perform the victory and end the game right under their noses. Only then did it occur to William B. that not only had Dragon Army ended the game, it was possible that under the rules, they had won it. After all, no matter what happened, you were not certified as the winner unless you had enough unfrozen soldiers to touch the corners of the gate and pass someone through into the enemy's corridor. Therefore, by one way of thinking, you could argue that the ending ritual was victory. The battle room certainly recognized it as the end of the game. The teacher gate opened and Major Anderson came into the room. "Ender," he called, looking around. One of the frozen dragon soldiers tried to answer him through jaws that were clamped shut by the flash suit. Anderson hooked over to him and thawed him. Ender was smiling. "I beat you again, sir," he said. "Nonsense, Ender," Anderson said softly. "Your battle was with Griffin and Tiger." "How stupid do you think I am?" said Ender. Loudly, Anderson said, "After that little maneuver, the rules are being revised to require that all of the enemy's soldiers must be frozen or disabled before the gate can be reversed." "It could only work that way once anyway," Ender said. Anderson handed him the hook. Ender unfroze everyone at once. "To hell with protocol. To hell with everything. Hey!" he shouted as Anderson moved away. "What is it next time? My army in a cage without guns with the rest of the battle school against them? How about a little equality?" There was a loud murmur of agreement from the other boys, and not all of it came from Dragon Army. Anderson did not so much as turn around to acknowledge Ender's challenge. Finally, it was William B. who answered. Ender, if you're on one side of the battle, it won't be equal no matter what the conditions are. Right, called the boys. Many of them laughed. Talomomo began clapping his hands. Ender Wiggin! He shouted. The other boys also clapped and shouted Ender's name. Ender passed through the enemy gate. His soldiers followed him. The sound of them shouting his name followed him through the corridors. Practice tonight? Asked Crazy Tom. Ender shook his head. Tomorrow morning, then. No. Well, when? Never again, as far as I'm concerned. He could hear the murmurs behind him. Hey, that's not fair, said one of the boys. It's not our fault the teachers are screwing up the game. You can't just stop teaching us stuff because... Ender slammed his open hand against the wall and shouted at the boy, I don't care about the game anymore! His voice echoed through the corridor. Boys from other armies came to their doors. He spoke quietly into the silence. Do you understand? And he whispered, the game is over. He walked back to his room alone. He wanted to lie down, but he couldn't because the bed was wet. It reminded him of all that had happened today, and in fury, he tore the mattress and blankets from the bed frame and shoved them out into the corridor. Then he wadded up a uniform to serve as a pillow and lay on the fabric of wires strung across the frame. It was uncomfortable, but Ender didn't care enough to get up. He had only been there a few minutes when someone knocked at the door. Go away, he said softly. Whoever was knocking didn't hear him or didn't care. Finally, Ender said, come in.